Okay, so we're starting. Thank you very much for being here. You can hear me, right? Okay, so this is a session dedicated to the Green Deal, to cities, and to transition. And I think we should start just by recapping what the Green Deal was about. The Green Deal was about believing that the environmental degradation and climate change is an existential threat for everyone, which it is. And from then, we had a major goal, 55% reduction of emissions until 2030. And from there are dozens and dozens of rules, measures, and regulations. Everything you can imagine, ranging from planting 3 billion trees to rules for algae, methane strategy, even a Green Deal for pollinators. So it's really comprehensive. And cherry on top of the cake, there's a 1 trillion euro funding for the Green Deal. It was called the European Step on the Moon, Man on the Moon moment. It was called Reconciling Nature with Economy or Economy with Nature. And where are we now? There was very swift progress initially, but since then we've had a little bit of a loss of steam. I think everyone will agree. And why have we had a loss of steam? Well, many reasons, mainly political. In some countries, we have strong populist movements that are portraying green policies as the culprit for economic hardships. In other countries, even without populist movements, we have other phenomena. We have, for example, a war in Ukraine and an energy crisis. And many parties and even some governments saying that, well, the focus now is on having available and affordable energy. It doesn't matter where it comes from. Other countries, we have very strong farming communities. And they play a heavy role. Suddenly, biodiversity is not so important. In other countries, some ministers and heads of state are saying, well, environmental issues, it's all a matter of individual transition and individual decision. And all this is brewing in Europe. So we do have an existential threat, but it's very delicate. And what is the role of cities in the middle of all this? Well, cities, they're strongly connected to their people, they're strongly connected to their territory. Cities are acutely feeling, first of all, the impacts of climate change, but also social tensions. And cities feel very responsible for these phenomena. Cities feel the responsibility to be agile and to act and react and prevent. Cities know that citizens will be knocking on their door before anyone else's door. And they feel everything firsthand, even before central governments. So it's delicate, but cities do have a role to play. Cities have understood that environmental agendas are not just environmental agendas, they're social and they're economic. When we have a free public bus transport system, for example, like we have in Cascais, it's not just about mitigating emissions. It's about social cohesion. Cities know that when we have nature-based solutions for green corridors like rivers, for example, it's not just about mitigating floods downstream. It's about connectivity, accessibility, leisure, quality of life. So cities do know that the battle for sustainability can be won or lost in their territories. And here we are today. We are today. Scaring you. So, is it back? Here we are today. Let's take a look at the role of cities. Let's take a look at the mantra of the Green Deal, which is reducing the impact of climate change, reducing environmental degradation. Let's look at the tools and the rules and the legislation that the Green Deal has implemented. let's look at our great panel. 3 are here, 3 are online. They're really, really diverse. They're really, really knowledgeable. And I will go for one round of questions. I will ask each speaker to speak for 5 minutes. I will give you a bad eye when 1 minute is left. And then we will have time for questions from the audience. And I will ask each one of you to be really concrete. Give us concrete examples. Give us strong opinions. Don't be fluffy. That is what I ask today. And I think the audience is happy about that. So we start with you, Georgia. Georgia is the executive director of the Urban Transition Mission. She will explain what this is about, but it's a super, super powerful tool. And I will ask you for the global perspective of all of this that we've been discussing. How do we knit together the role of cities, what is happening in the EU, what other instruments do we need, how do we get the transition going?
Thank you very much, Johanna, for the great introduction and for setting the scene. I want to start by saying you talked about the existential threat, and I think that this is a very important starting point, especially when we are here at COP. But this existential threat is also an unmissable opportunity. So I kind of want to think about, in a positive manner, how we can really think through solutions that can help us cope with this existential threat, overcome this existential threat, and also, leave us with a better future. And I okay. So I think you already said about the important role that the cities are playing, and I think it's important to underline the different aspects. So from one side, we have, of course, cities that now account for the 50% of global population, with a trend of urbanization that is just doubling and increasing at a very fast pace. They also account for 70% of the global figure of energy consumption, and they also account for 75% of the emissions that we are producing at the moment. They are also an economic engine, so it's not just a challenge or an opportunity for the EU, but globally we need to think that about 80% of the global GDP is actually produced and developed in cities. So you already mentioned how they are the closest level to citizens and they are able to influence on the ground how things are being implemented. And I think that all these different elements have really resonated with the recent policies and activities that have been set up in some of the more focused to the local level policies of the European Union as well. So I indeed represent the Urban Transition Mission. This is a mission part of a larger initiative called Mission Innovation. It's a national-led initiative with countries across the world, 23 plus the European Union on behalf of the 27 member states, with a specific goal to triple investment in research and innovation to accelerate the energy transition. Within this larger initiative, there are 7 missions, some of them focusing specifically on technologies like hydrogen, others focusing on sectors like shipping, and ours, the very, very special one, the urban transitions one, that is trying to bring together cities to really help them in their pathway to decarbonization and to become a more resilient community. In our case in particular, the European Commission is not only one of the core partners. We have Sweden, we have Austria, we have Saudi Arabia, India, and many other countries, but the European Commission is one of the co-leads, one of the minds behind the development and the establishment of this mission, together with the Global Covenant and JBI Urban Europe. And the reason for that is that there is an understanding of the great potential in cities, but also this willingness to kind of learn from what cities are doing outside of Europe and making sure that we have a platform to ensure that there is capacity building, ability to exchange, ability to access knowledge, solutions, and also to innovate together across the globe. So that's a bit where we start from with our mission. We have engaged 48 cities. Cascais has been engaged already for 1 year together with us. And the idea is really to bring together these cities, facilitate their dialogue with the national level, ensuring that we can establish cooperation with the private sector in particular, but also with financial institutions. And I think this is very important because a transition comes with a cost. So we need to always think about our partnership as an enabler for these different steps. And it really looks into providing, as I said, a platform for knowledge exchange and to learn from each other. And the Commission has also been putting forward a €2 million contract to support our mission to create an online platform where different trainings and different opportunities for capacity building and knowledge exchange are being held across the board. This is just, of course, one example of how this facilitation is being brought forward. But there are also initiatives here at COP that are signifying very strongly how the importance of cities is being more and more understood at the global level. And I just want to mention one that was launched just a couple of days ago during the Local Climate Action Summit on the 1st and 2nd of December. This was co-hosted by the President, Dr. Al Jaber, and Michael Bloomberg as part of the special envoy of the Secretary General for Climate Action and Solutions. During that summit, there was an official launch of a new program called CHAMP. You probably have heard about it in the past days. CHAMP stands for Coalition for Higher Ambition and Multi-Level Partnership. It's been already endorsed by 64 countries across the world. And the idea behind it is really to foster, as much as possible, collaboration between local leader and national leader in implementing the different national determined contribution and reducing emission at the national level. So this is one other element, one other example of how policies can try to support and bringing forward commitment across the globe to really help cities in their journey. And of course, the European Commission was one of the countries that endorsed this.
Thank you. Thank you, Georgia. So now we go to Goksen Sohin. You're a senior advisor for ICLEI, and ICLEI is the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. ICLEI has existed for decades. So, you understood before everyone else that the role of cities was really, really important. And you congregate cities from all over the world. But today you will be focusing on the European side of the transition and the role of the EU, the role of cities. And I'll give you the microphone because I think the other one is not working.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm Gökşen. I work at ICLEI European Secretariat. And indeed, the European Green Deal, if I kind of start talking about the Green Deal from where you left, it gave us a great deal of tools to recognize, acknowledge the nature, biodiversity, and social crisis and how they are interconnected, and to act on this. So the Green Deal increased our renewable energy targets, it increased our energy efficiency targets, but also it gave importance to the energy poverty in cities and gave importance to the buildings renovation. We haven't finished with that legislation, but we are still working on this. So I think the Green Deal set a good framework for everyone, all the different actors in the EU to operate in. But now we are moving to another phase of the Green Deal, which is the implementation phase. And with the implementation phase, and now I'm going back to Georgia's point, it's like when we move to the implementation, all the actors start to see that cities play a key role in implementing all kinds of social cohesion, nature, biodiversity, and climate and energy policies. So the importance is coming back to the cities. We see in Europe, for example, a number of other missions that are launched by the European Commission, such as the Net Zero Cities, the kind of adaptation mission. They are the missions for cities. So they are aiming to actually support over 100 cities in Europe to reach climate neutrality by 2030. Or they are supporting to create resilient cities through the adaptation mission. And Cascais is one of the mission cities in that sense. Are they enough to help cities implement? Unfortunately not, because the cities, when they take action, they need to be supported. Their voice needs to be heard horizontally because they are the first ones to get any sort of reaction from their citizens. So they need to have the social inclusion and more inclusive and participatory approach when they develop their policies. But their voice also needs to be heard vertically, so that whenever they take action, whenever they reduce emissions, their objectives need to be taken account at the national level and at the supranational level, at the EU level. That's why CHAMP is very important, because through the CHAMP, 64 countries pledged to take sub-national targets into account when they develop their or when they revise their NDCs by 2025. So we are entering in a new phase when we think about how to implement, and that is, I think, very exciting phase. But also, now coming back to the European part, we need to do this at home when we go back to Brussels or when we go back to our capitals. We need to bring the champ back to Europe, back to the European capitals, and make sure that all of the targets that are set by cities are taken into account in all of the member states' national energy and climate plans, because they are also revising their national plans to implement new targets set through the Green Deal. And also, we need to think about the finance, and I will finish on that note, because the finance is currently reaching the national governments, and it is not systematically reaching to cities to implement what they need to implement for reaching the objectives of the Green Deal. That's why I think it will be crucial when we are entering into this new era and thinking about how to implement. We need to strengthen our focus on multi-level governance and making sure that the cities have access to direct finance to implement their programs, transition programs.
Thank you. Thank you for the tips as well. And yes, I totally agree that a new phase is starting regarding the voice of cities in these multilateral forums such as COPs. I think this year is really a year that has marked a big change in that respect, and I hope to see more and more progress and materialization from here onwards. So now we go to Francisco Ferreira. You are the head of a Portuguese NGO called Zero, and I would really like to know your perspective on all of these issues. No fluffiness, strong opinions. I know you have strong opinions.
So good afternoon to all of you. In fact, my role as a Portuguese NGO, and we have projects working with cities, particularly we have a project at European level supported by LIFE, where we look at energy and climate plans from the different cities. I really think that where Portugal is failing and cities are failing is on a sustainable mobility. That is, we have 30% of our emissions related with road transport, particularly with the fact that we have too many cars entering the different cities and circulating within them. And what is happening currently in Portugal is that while we need to decrease this percentage to get to our numbers by 2030, basically to reduce by 55, eventually 60% our percentage between 2005 and 2030, we are actually increasing the weight of road transport, at least looking at the numbers of 2023. And cities are indeed the ones responsible for this, because they have been looking a lot as country policies for not looking at the demand, but looking at the offer of public transport. And things have to go together. So we are increasing a lot all the possibilities for people to actually use train, buses, bicycles. We could do much further down the road, but we're not disincentivizing sufficiently the use of the car. And we don't need, to leave the car at home. That would be the greatest thing. But we need at least for people to reduce the number of kilometers that they do on a daily basis, because that has an impact on air quality, on energy, on climate, and it's basically something that we should look for decades in terms of land use planning, but we don't have the time for land use planning. So we need immediate measures to actually retract what is going on in terms of this increase of emissions from the road transport. Also, cities has a huge importance on energy production and energy efficiency. I would say even energy sufficiency, because one of the problems that we have is that we have a lot of people in Portugal, around 3 million people in energy poverty. And we also have transport poverty, by the way, but on energy poverty. And that should be a mixture of the measures that are being supported by the state with structural measures for people in the different cities to actually get a better quality of life and the well-being that they deserve. That takes decades. That takes millions and millions of investment. So again, like in transport, we need to have two policies, one short-term, one long-term, to actually manage the issue. And finally, I would talk about the waste policy. I think that waste is one of the key issues also in many cities, particularly the ones that we are following in Portugal, because we are quite below the targets on recycling, on reusing, and again, cities play an extremely important role. We need to pay for what we produce. We need door-to-door collection. I think really we know the way in all these areas. We just need to go into action. And just to finish up, the European Green Deal, we would like to have a 2.0 version of the European Green Deal. While the Commission looks at more implementation than improvement, I think that we need both. We really need to go into action, but we need to continue to upgrade our targets.
Thank you. I move here now so that our online participants can see me. Hello. So I'll start. Thank you for the provocations, Francisco. I think that they were pretty spot on. A lot of the negative footprint lies in cities because that's where people are, operations, infrastructure, of course. But I think many of the solutions are there as well because cities concentrate economies of scale and innovation and the will. Cities concentrate the will. And then we're lacking some tools, but... So I would like to go to Inês now. Hello. Inês is a partner at Deloitte. You are also a former Secretary of State. So you are really in a privileged position to have a broad perspective of the role of private and public sector. I know today you're speaking as private sector. And from Deloitte, you are like an observatory. You can see the transition happening in different kinds of companies, different areas. What are the drivers? What are the obstacles? And I'm very interested. We are very interested in knowing your perspective on how all this is sort of knitted together from European level down to cities and the role of the private sector. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Joana. Bom dia a todos. Primeiro as minhas palavras em português, para todos os amigos e colegas que estão na plateia, que eu sei que são muitos, e beijinho a todos. And now I will speak in English for the benefit of all our guests. So it is a very important question, and I think there are at least 3 points which I think are important to mention. One more related to businesses themselves, the other more related to cities. I think the biggest hurdle that we face right now is how to make business leadership understand that the Green New Deal regulation pipeline must be seen as an opportunity to further consolidate their position in terms of long-term value delivery. That is of particular importance. When we talk about sustainability, in reality, we are talking about how well do you handle risks? And risks come in many forms. They come in financial forms, but also in economic forms, in social forms, in environmental forms. I mean, for example, COVID is an obvious example of such events. But remember, for example, even this year, a flood in Eastern Europe caused problems in one of the largest companies in Portugal, which is Auto Europa. So how well are you able to manage those risks is also part of what sustainability means. And Deloitte is invested in getting this vision through to CEOs, since we observed that there is a very big gap between, or this connection between impacts, these impacts, which are already here and are already hurting bottom line of many companies, and actual actions from corporate leadership. If you ask CEOs how serious their party is about doing what needs to be done in terms of climate change, only about 1/3 says that, oh, we are really serious, which means that 2/3 are not. That is an issue, and it's terrible. So we need to be able to help them navigate these troubled waters by demonstrating that sustainability is not about, tree hugging. It's about reducing negative impacts, bolster positive impacts, and in the end, to regenerate the actual source of their income, which is the natural system and a thriving society. That is what provides them income. And in what cities are concerned, I once told Frans Timmermans, when he was still VP for the European Commission, that cities are sort of a making or breaking place. So if you make it there, you can make it anywhere. And they are the ideal living lab to test and foster a lot of solutions, not just climate-related solutions. Remember, that is one of the SDGs. There are 17 SDGs. And crucial to this success is to involve citizens. I believe that is the missing piece in a lot of projects. We tend to work on sectors, like Francisco was saying, building, mobility, energy, but we forget consumption. And consumption is a very big piece of the environmental impact. So we need to be more involving of citizens and, of course, businesses. But in urban environments, citizens are a very big piece of the issue, and we need to involve them in the solutions to reduce those impacts through citizen science projects, through living labs, tackling all these issues: mobility, waste, energy. That is the way to go. And Deloitte is working on this as well through assets such as Clean Choice, which is a very important project to us. And our vision in the end is to build a tool that is able to evolve towards becoming a true urban metabolism asset. And we are very happy that Cascais is part of that process as well. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Please stay online because there might be some questions. Okay, so now we go to José Almeida. Hello. And you are the CEO of Green Vault. So you are actually a practitioner, hands-on, on the ground, making or helping the transition to happen. So it would be very useful for us to understand as well how do you see the transition happening? How do you see the link between what emanates from EU regulation all the way down to your everyday business, and also, of course, the role of municipalities? Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna, and good morning or good afternoon for the participants. And first of all, of course, thank you for the invitation, Joanna, and your team. And this recognition is not only this event, but also what we have been doing in the municipality. And I will start for this last part about what we can do and the solutions. And I think Cascais has positioned itself as a municipality where you test different solutions, because the truth is the challenge that we have with energy transition will not be solved with a single bullet, a silver bullet that solves all the problems. We need to focus on different things, as the other speakers mentioned, different aspects. But more important than that is to create the conditions to test solutions, learn with the solutions, and scale the solutions from local level to European level and the reverse. So in the specific part of what we do, Green Vault Comunidades, and what we did also in the municipality of Cascais, is focusing on one solution that I believe that it's very impactful, but at the same time very simple. The principle is about solar energy that, as we know, right now is not only a source of clean energy, but it's the cheapest source of energy, electric energy, especially when it's connected with consumption. So this is great news, because for a long time renewable sources were not economical, but now that reason is out of the way, and we can combine the environment, the economy, and the social aspect. So what we do and what we did in Cascais, that we believe served as an example even for European level. It's basically allowing that the production of solar energy at the rooftop, at the decentralized, is not limited to the buildings where they can be installed, because that was limiting even the potential of using rooftops for production, but simply sharing that production that you don't consume at that level with your neighbors. And for us, this is really it's a very important aspect, not only because it becomes more interesting even to explore all the spaces that you have, but allows to develop a social aspect that we did in Cascais, that when you can share the energy that the installation doesn't consume, you can then decide what you do with that energy. And in particular, you can share it with people that in other reason. Yes, Joanna, I see a signal. Oh. As I was saying, the sharing allows you to then can involve people that otherwise could not be investing in solar energy or having solar energy. For example, people that live in apartments, people that are, as someone said, in Portugal, you know this, in energy poverty, that probably cannot invest, probably doesn't, is not able to have solar panels on their houses. And through the sharing, they can benefit for someone that actually produce and is able to share. So I'm very proud of the project that we did in Cascais, and it served as an example for now at the European level, the energy sharing business model to be developed as a tool for European level. And I think we all can be proud of what we did in Cascais, not only at with the people that are involved, but also to give an example of a solution for our challenge.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for sticking to time, because this means that we can get some questions from the audience before I wrap up. And also thank you for pointing out concrete solutions, also for putting the finger on the problem, but for pointing out concrete solutions. So I'm looking to our dear participants, and I was wondering if anyone has a question. Please introduce yourself before.
Obrigado, Sra. Vereadora. Muito bom dia a todas e todos. Eu iria pedir desculpa, mas vou-me expressar antes em português de uma forma mais fluente e, como tal, eu sou Ricardo Fernandes, Presidente da Câmara Municipal do Bom Barral, mas ao mesmo tempo também dentro da comunidade intermunicipal da Agência de Energia Oeste Sustentável, e é nessa qualidade que no fundo aqui estou. No fundo, isto não é bem uma questão que eu gostaria de colocar, no fundo é interpretar tudo aquilo que foi dito e o diagnóstico está feito. Ainda há pouco tive uma pequena lição, e é verdade, ali à entrada do seu professor Helder, de facto me dizia que em situações destas e do poder local que podem fazer muito pelo clima, e é verdade, e por esta transição energética. Plantar árvores, impedir que haja asfaltamentos descontrolados, muitas vezes até em zonas agrícolas, e eu represento exatamente uma zona por excelência agrícola, muito mais rápido. E então a questão é tão simples como esta também, que se falou também desta parte dos transportes e transportes públicos, que muitas vezes não é possível fazer em territórios exatamente dispersos, em que de facto o meio de transporte por excelência é o automóvel, e que impede a nossa vontade realmente de participar nesta transição mais rápida e mais eficiente, como se faz.
Obrigada. So for our English-speaking participants. The mayor of Bombarral, a municipality in Portugal, but also the head of an environment agency, a regional environment energy agency, and the issue is mobility. And so for locations that are not so central, not around the capitals or metropolitan areas, the issue of mobility is actually much harder to resolve. And actually, we have an example of this regarding what happened in France with the Gilets jaunes. And it's extremely, extremely sensitive because communication is so important. And I remember the people who were protesting saying, you guys are worried about the end of the world, we're worried about the end of the week. So we have to be careful about how solutions are implemented and especially how they are communicated. But this is my opinion. I would really like to know the panel's opinion. And Francisco looks like he wants to go first. And for the online participant, Inês as well. Okay, so we go first to Francisco and then to Inês.
I think that we do have that problem in Portugal. We should consider that most of the people in Portugal do live in the metropolitan areas of Lisbon and Porto, but if we look at a just transition, we should have the solutions for the people that are in the rural areas, and also have the possibility to have the affordable pass that we have for 40 euros or 80 euros for families, and have the public transport to do it. I think that the solution has to be different. It goes basically through shared transport, through the involvement of taxis, through supporting the possibilities of mobility where on demand we need to use digital facilities like apps or just plain phones for the people that do not use the mobile phones to actually be able to say, look, I need to go from here to the city center or to another place tomorrow at 10 or within 15 minutes, what would be possible to do? And like in cities, we optimize the transport and the shared of cars or buses to actually go through the different routes. That's what we have to do in the rural areas. It's much more expensive, it requires higher support, but it's the only way to go.
Thank you. I'll just go to Inês and then I'll go to you. So Inês.
Thank you, Joana. So I commend the representation of Bombarral. I'm also made of Oeste, so it's very happy to hear that Bombarral is present, so great. So let me get to the issue. So I strongly believe that on top of energy poverty, we should discuss mobility poverty in our country. And one of the issues that we need to really think is how to approach precisely the issues at Bombarral as stated. How do we handle mobility poverty in Portugal? Of course, there are many projects that can be, thrown onto the table. For example, transporte a pedido, it is an issue. So transport by request, which has functioned in a lot of regions, and it was tested in Portugal, I believe, very successfully. And we need to really get finance backing these type of solutions. Also, very important is to use the power of digital solutions. For example, artificial intelligence. Of course, it's a very big thing right now, but it should also be important in order to better understand the patterns of mobility of citizens in order to really predict the natural routes of transport, either public transport, of course, in transport by request, and also soft transport, so soft mobility or active mobility, and really get the funding backing these solutions in order to deliver them to where the people most need them. That is the way that we should go, and that is the way that we should be exploring. So mobility poverty should be on top of the priority, on top of energy, of home poverty. those are the issues that we should be really tackling, and those are the issues that citizens should be involved from the very first step in deriving the solutions needed to tackle them. That is my opinion, at least.
Well, we asked for strong opinions, and that's what we got. Thank you. I know.
I will
Roxanne
add a
wants-
couple of sentences of to what Ines said, because my point was also on the climate finance side, because when a city is developing a project, then they need to discuss this with different ministries. If it is a mobility project, you need to discuss with the transport ministry, you need to discuss with the kind of energy ministry, urbanization ministry, and so on, which takes a lot of time, and then the finance is not coming to a program, to a transformation program. It's coming mostly to different parts of a project, and it takes time. If we want to really achieve our 2030 objectives, the finance should come to the programs rather than individual smaller projects. And then in that way, we can have a kind of an approach which is kind of useful for the social aspect as well as the mobility, and then as well as the energy transition. So we need to, I think in a more holistic way when we provide the finance to cities.
Thank you. Georgia.
I'm going to say something maybe from a different perspective.
Great.
I think very often when we talk about mobility in particular, we have this perspective that is about replacing solutions that we have with cleaner solutions. But I want to be a little bit, I wouldn't say polemic, but put a thought out there. Maybe the starting point should be to rethink why do we need to move. So starting from the conception of what type of access do we want to give our citizens that are living in these rural areas, but even locally, why are people moving? What are they trying to get to? Are they trying to get to a school? Are they trying to get to work? What kind of rethinking a little bit more holistically our responses. And I think one of the elements that was already mentioned before is, of course, the utilization of digitalization as a tool to help us in kind of revising this type of policies. And from my perspective, I think we still have, even in Europe, a very big data challenge. Cities in Europe are definitely lackier than cities in other parts of the world in terms of being able to capture, monitor, and use their own data, but there is still a gap in terms of being able to use that data to forecast appropriately how to change the policy, and especially when it comes to urban mobility. There is also, for sure, a need to be more consequential, perhaps, in utilizing the data that are coming from different levels, and to engage the private sector also in that, because a lot of data when it comes to mobility is also owned by different types of actors. So I think that kind of systemic collaboration is also quite essential. I make one final point and then I'll stop. I think this access to data is also a practical impact on the interest from the private sector to kind of come into partnership, utilize new ways of moving forward blended finance, to kind of invest together in this type of infrastructure. Because of course everyone is looking for a return on investment, right? From the private sector is likely economic, for the public sector is the health and well-being of the citizens. Let's say it's a bit of a generalization now, but that's a bit the direction. So I think this idea of being able to work together with the private sector across level to have secure frameworks that can help us de-risk this type of investment, also in areas that might be less appealing, perhaps, to kind of fund the connections to, will be a game changer for this type of policies.
Okay, we're getting a very rich collection of solutions. We have time for one more question. Please just say your name and who you're representing.
Hola, my name's Ray. I just had a quick question, and I'm not sure if this is the right panel to ask it, but aside from the recent recycling programs, I was curious about what actions Portugal is doing working with the EU in regards with ghost fishing nets, and more importantly, preventing new fishing nets from entering the supply chain and it affecting the environment and soon the local fishing economy as well. I was curious what Portugal is doing, considering they're one of the biggest contributors to ghost fishing nets within Europe.
So fishing communities, fishing nets.
Specifically fishing nets, yeah.
Yes.
If you guys
and
are
from
working.
there we can go to circular economy in general. Does anyone want to share? Well, of course, Well, I can give you a case study about Cascais, and then I will give the floor to the speakers. I'm not a speaker, but I don't resist. We have a really cool project called, it's about adaptation and mitigation, whereby we give out a €3,000 grant to local movements. They don't have to be formally constituted. And the local NGO had this brilliant idea of working with the fishing community. So they collect the unused, well, the ruined nets, and they are transformed into sneakers or into picnic tables that go into our green parks. This is very micro, but it's a beautiful example. And the fishing community much prefers to liaise with a local NGO than with us, the council. So it works. It's very fluid. But I don't know if Francisco or anyone else wants to add anything from a more global, national perspective. Okay. So before closing, I would ask each speaker, and I'll start with Jose, we'll do it the other way around. If you were sitting at the COP negotiation table and you had one wish, what would your pitch be? What would you like to have in the final text? And I'm sorry I didn't brief you for this because it has just occurred to me.
Thank you, Joanna. I would say that my wish would be focus on what we can in solutions, not discussing the problem. It's very important that we are pragmatic, that we don't try a solution that solve everything. This is kind of something that, in my opinion, is not the most helpful. So focus on solutions and what is already tested results that brings people to any transition and the benefits to the people that matter. Everyone.
Thank you. Ines.
Well, I would repeat what Antonio Guterres said when he first came into presidency. So no more coal power plants, stop subsidizing fossil fuels, and tax pollution, not people or people's work. I think those three actions are fundamental to get it anywhere.
I think you have a round of applause here. I am tempted to make comments regarding the whole overall COP context, but I won't. And now I will go to Francisco.
I think that overall cities have a mission in terms of changing the mentality of people, not only the youngest ones, but all the citizens that live in the municipality. That's Ines talked about the consumerism, the amount of products that we have and that we waste. And if we want to have municipal policies, we do need the citizens involved and engaged, and that is the main message. Climate policy really starts at the local level.
So I need to kind of share a disclaimer because ICLEI is the focal point of the local governments and municipal action constituency in the UNFCCC. So we actually have a position altogether on this.
Privileged.
And then, our key message to the negotiations is that it's like the local governments, local and subnational governments need to have a seat at the table. All these policies that will, at the end of the day, influence the local strategies, local policies, targets are done by national governments, and the local governments do not have a seat at the table. So we are fighting really hard to have a seat, to provide a seat at the table for subnational governments. And I want to share this also. It's like we have seen the new draft text on the global stocktake, which has a couple of mentions of the role of local governments, but it is not acknowledging for example, the CHAM pledge that Georgia spoke about, and it is not making a clear reference or a request to parties to actually take into account the role of subnational governments when they are revising their NDCs. So if I can say one thing to the negotiators, or if I'm sitting at the table, I would encourage them that they have time between today and tomorrow to still make amendments on the text. So they should definitely advocate for including the role of local subnational governments in the global stocktake text.
Thank you.
I have a very simple thing to say. Listen to Gokshan. So, no, I think I mentioned it earlier. There was a great start from a local government perspective, I would say, of the COP in the past days. The announcement of the Loss and Damage Fund. Of course, there is more work to be done, but it's a great success. The Local Climate Action Summit hosted for the first time within the Blue Zone in partnership with the presidency, and 64 countries joining this coalition for higher ambition and multi-level partnership, really to work together on aligning with the national determined contribution and the efforts of the local government. It's cooperation, it's happening. So all of this, I think, is a great starting point, but it's not enough. So listen to Gokshan. Maybe one thing that I would like also to mention, a lot of the conversations come back to some of the key words around innovation and how do we need to bring forward game changers, how do we need to think about new ways of doing things. And very often we land on conversation about technologies. And technologies are indeed essential. And I work for the urban transition mission of mission innovation, right? But innovation is also coming from a regulatory point of view, clear messages sent not only to governance and to different levels, but also to people and to businesses. And it comes also from thinking about how we can systemically use cities, not only as the place where you implement action, yes, we should continue doing that, but also where innovation is being born. So that's something else that I think it's very important to keep in mind. We are partner in that game, not just someone that tags along for the ride. Absolutely, I think cities have the power and the willingness to engage. So do not forget that and listen to the ocean.
So I'll try to wrap up. Thank you, everyone. We really did put our finger. Oh, wait, there's one more question.
Can I make a last question?
Well,
Could I make the last question?
we have like 1 minute, so please be very brief.
Okay, perfect. So I
Stand up.
So I'm Gabriela Fernandez. I work for the Cascais Municipality, and we have different projects going on right now regarding climate action, so mobility, energy, food system transformations. And as a youth and a young person, I would like to ask you about what is the empowerment of the youth regarding this energy, mobility, and the just transition, because we do in Portugal and in the local places such as Cascais, the approaches of top-down and bottom-up activities. And I would like to ask you if you put the youth needs on the table as well when you have the discussion. Thank you very much.
So I ask for 2 volunteers from the panel to answer this question. Georgia.
So very concretely, I can talk about the Urban Transition Mission. We have a cluster, which is kind of a group where we bring together cities that will be dealing with governance at large across the board. And one of the partners of our mission is student energy. So we are working together with them to come up with a series of resources and modules and trainings that can help local authorities and local governments across the world to learn how to really benefit from the innovation that comes from the way of thinking of youth, including this in academia, especially in curricula from universities, but also thinking about how we can really make public sector a viable career path for young people. Because I think it's a place where you need dedication. You're probably not going to get rich in public sector, but you need dedication and you can make the world change. And I think it is also important to discuss, in particular with you.
Thank you. Did you get that? Yeah?
And maybe to add, while coming to COP28, a number of cities around the world organize their local stocktakes as their contribution to the global stocktake. And they organize it with youth. So they discuss how far they have come in the last 5 years and where they want to go all together. So I think this is the kind of this horizontal approach that we discussed in the beginning. It's like that all those policies, they are, as Francisco said, they need to be developed together with youth, and actually youth is the longer term residents of the city. So you need to take into account youth perspective. And I think a number of cities, they have understood it, and as Georgia said, they are working with academia to change the kind of the curriculum and make sure that, for example, still we don't teach about the gas boilers anymore in the universities, but we teach about renewables, we teach about solar panels in the universities. So I think this transformation is happening, but it needs to scale up, and that is maybe an encouragement to all the kind of city representatives to establish this local stock takes or town hall COPs before coming to COP to discuss actually what has happened in the city and what will happen in the next year until they come to COP the year after.
No. Oh, you'd finished. I was just going to save the microphone. But I think you three should speak at the end, definitely. So we also have in the audience the Portuguese ambassador for the Covenant of Mayors, right? So, Rogério, Iva.
Yeah, thank you.
Merci.
Thank you very much. As the European Climate Pact ambassador, also a representative of one of the Portuguese NGOs and an energy agency, a regional energy agency in Portugal. One of the questions I would like to point out would be to the importance of involvement of people. Cities are people and are consumers. One of the main aspects of climate change is consumerism, as it was being said today. And we have to bear in mind that over the last 50 years, the world trade just increased 900%. 900%. And this is one of the major drives, one of the major problems and issues that we have to solve. And I would like to point out the importance and ask for the importance of the NGOs, associations of citizens and energy agencies in supporting local authorities in this role of educating all the sectors of society, children and elder people. And that is my question.
Thank you. I don't think I will let you answer because we're running out of time. But I think Rogério has pointed out plenty of solutions as well as the problem. So we have focused on a lot of problems and challenges. You've pointed out stuff like transport poverty, the bad, dark footprints of cities. You've pointed out that 2/3 of CEOs don't even care about climate change or are not worried about climate change. You've pointed out that ministries don't speak amongst each other. You've told us that time is an issue. But you've also pointed out cool solutions. For example, yes, projects or living labs are important, but so are programs, more holistic programs. You've pointed out solutions like on-demand transport and taxi sharing. You've pointed out that we should focus on consumption and consumers, and these are sometimes forgotten. You've pointed out that we should question conventions and habits. Why not question them? You've pointed out the importance of liaising with citizens. You've pointed out that we should look at short-term policies, not just long-term policies, and that cities should have a voice in the multilateral stage. We just have to figure out how. And we should look at how communication can be clearer. And finally, I'll finish the way Georgia started, because we have the issues, we have the threats, but let's look at all this as an opportunity. And let's finish on that note. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you.